Many times an accounting practice can be like a pressure pot with real deadlines that are critical. How do you actually work with your team to actually foster a positive environment when staff are working under pressure? And what are your tips?
Tell me, Tina, tell me. So I've left a festering pot back at my place. What now? A few deadlines.
We have a great culture. One of the things that I've found recently through one of our reviews, the review process that we went through with our team, is that they felt that the pressure of productivity and some KPIs were turning them into robots, and that they were, they weren't actually able to look sideways because they had to meet their KPIs. So I saw this as a real issue in the practice, because I didn't want to create a team of robots. So we've really looked to work on our culture and ways in which we can make them feel as though they can actually do things more innovative or come up with better solutions to provide other services or different things like that. So we actually now have a 10% innovation target for our staff. So they actually have to spend 10% of their time on things outside of the technical accounting. So find better ways to provide services to client, to think of different things that might improve the culture or the actual general services that we're providing. So that's been a great initiative. We actually also did an innovation challenge, and out of that innovation challenge came a whole lot of ideas that was actually really fostering workplace wellness. And so we have now a whole workplace wellness program that was really came from the team in terms of things that they could do to make sure that they're ensuring that they stand up and exercise through the day, and they eat healthy, and they do things to actually give them a clear mind and be able to focus on their work, which ultimately will lead to more productivity. So it's interesting, because I actually started the process by saying forget about productivity, yet they've actually come up with concepts that will actually enable them to be more productive by being healthier in the workplace. So I think it's just constantly keeping that feedback loop open with your staff. And I don't think I have all the ideas, but if you actually ask the team for ideas, and the things that they can come up with are great. So I really push back to them in terms of finding ways to make sure that everyone's focused and feeling as though they're not in a stress pot, or that it's not a stressful environment, because ultimately I'm not going to get the best out of them, and I'm not going to retain them as staff if they're in that constant environment of high stress. And
Yes, it is a constantly evolving process, and literally it's as simple as the boss or one of the bosses walking around 3 or 4 times a day and saying, Peter, how's that job for Smith going? And I hope you're not worrying too much about your CPA exam next week, or and how's your toddler going at home.
Yes.
It's an important
knowing your team.
Knowing your team. Yeah. It's an important. It is a nurturing role we have, and this is where Greg would be very happy with us as caring employers.
Absolutely.
And it's vital. It's vital.
And I think the other thing you've probably touched on, both of you have touched on actually, is role modelling those behaviours. It's really important for staff to be able to see, the managers or business owners actually, putting their money where their mouth is, and role modelling the behaviours that they're trying to, embed throughout the workplace. It's a great way of, building that culture.
Because if you analyse our job, we sit behind a desk at a computer, potentially for 8 hours or 10 hours. It's disaster on the body, on the social life, and on the lots of other senses. So we try and break it up and pretend we're exciting.
So celebrating success is very important within your firm.
Peter, critical, and literally, high fives when we meet a deadline, or when we secure a new client. Or when we reach a goal, or put through a tough assignment or a tough gig, it's very important. It rewards all the critical senses, I think.
Yeah, that recognition is so important for employee engagement. Recognising good behaviour, celebrating success.
Yeah.
So, we all love harmony in the workplace, but from time to time we have to deal with conflict. Any tips for dealing with conflict in the workplace?
This is the toughest part of being.
And sometimes this is lessons learned, isn't it?
It certainly is, Peter, and it's never easy, especially with a team of 21. I find it just has to be immediate in terms of don't let things fester. It has to be personal and direct, but it has to be sympathetic, caring, and you confront things, but you do it with a sense of of hearing and feeling. I've never had to sack anybody, but after some conversations, we've agreed to part ways. But that's very rare for most of us. But you have to engage, and it's never easy, but it can be, as I say, it can be systematic and respectful. But just do it promptly.
Yeah, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. My best advice about dealing with workplace conflict is deal with the conflict. Be proactive. Rarely, if ever, does an issue resolve itself. And as you said, if it's left alone and untreated, it'll fester, it'll become worse, and it'll probably cost you time and money down the track. So you've got to address it as soon as it happens. You've got to address it in a constructive way. Yes. So we've actually got another really great resource on this. We've got an online learning course about having difficult conversations in the workplace. And it's really practical. It'll help you map out how to have a conversation about, a workplace issue in a really constructive, solutions-focused way.
For us, I find over the time in practice, there's really two types of conflicts that will arise. One is between employees, and the other can be between clients and employees. And both are equally I think, difficult for the person involved. And from a client point of view, we've had situations over time where our clients have spoken not very nicely to a staff member, and we have a zero tolerance on that. So I think it's a really important thing for your team to know that you won't tolerate bad behaviour from clients. And in any situation like that, and there's been probably a few situations over the years where I've said to the client, I'm sorry, we won't tolerate that, and we let the client go, as opposed to putting the employee in a difficult situation. So I think that's, whilst it's not employee to employee, it is a factor of being in practice, and sometimes clients can speak to you as the principal perfectly, but they might speak down to a staff member, and I've seen that happen many times over the years, and it's just something we won't tolerate, and we make sure that the staff member knows that we don't tolerate that behaviour.
We support them. That's very reassuring.
Any tips, Tanya, for employee conflict?
So we've had a situation in the past where we did have some conflict between two members on the team. As much as we do in terms of understanding communication styles and everything else, sometimes you do have conflict. And the way that we dealt with that was to act quickly. We actually looked at it, it was coming and sort of pointing towards potentially a bullying situation. So we actually looked at our policy in terms of bullying. We ramped it up tenfold. We actually put a no tolerance policy in place. So we stepped out. This is our position on bullying. It won't be tolerated, and we set that in place. Made every staff member sign the policy, so that everyone was aware we'd updated this policy. This is the situation, and the whole situation then sort of died down and didn't rear its ugly head again. So we took a very quick and no tolerance approach to it, because it's not comfortable for anyone in an office, particularly in a small office, when you've got those issues happening. So it has to come from the employer, and I think you've got to be setting the standards and making sure that the staff feel very safe, that there's no tolerance of that behaviour whatsoever, no favouritism on the team, and and the consequences will be very fast, and in our instance, we just wouldn't tolerate it. Anyone sort of in that situation, we wouldn't have any issue with letting them go.
That's a really good point. I think it does make it a lot easier when you have those policies in place, because people can see that you're dealing with it in a structured and fair and consistent manner. So look, I think that's a really, really great approach.